Welcome to Weber Math. I'm Nicholas Weber. Today we're going to be talking about absolute and relative references in Excel. As you know, you can refer to certain other cells. So for example, you can make this refer to A1. Now with relative references, they will move around as the formula moves. So as you move it down, it will become A1, A2, A3, and so on. As you drag the formula to the right, it will change the column reference. So A1, B1, C1, and then you could drag it down as well. So C1, C2, C3, and so on. Now, you can make absolute references so that certain parts of the formulas don't change. You can make the row reference absolute, the column reference absolute, or both. So if we have an absolute reference to both the column and the row, neither will change. So here we have A1, and with an absolute reference to both the column and the cell, it'll stay the same. So A1, 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 and so on. Now, if we make just the column reference absolute, the rows will change, but the column will stay the same. So here's A1, A2, A3, and so on, but as we go to the right, the column will not change. A1, 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 and so on, but the rows will change. So if we go A1, A1, A2, A3, A3, and so on. Now, we can also make the row absolute and the column relative. So here, again, row will not change, the column will. Here's A1, here's A1, here's A1, here's A1, and so on. But as we go to the right, this will be B1, C1, 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 and so on. Now this is all very abstract, so let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet and see what's going on. Okay, let's take a look at how relative and absolute cell references work. So first of all, for relative references, if we just refer to a cell, as you know, it'll display that value. Then if we drag it down, because this is a relative value, it'll shift. So this is A1, A2, A3, A4, and A5. And again, because it's relative, as you might guess, if we drag this to the right, this will actually show us, this will move over one column as well. So now this goes from A1 to B1, and the same rows apply. So this area currently is reflecting this area. So what happens, let's zoom out a little bit so we can get column G in on the fun as well. So what happens if we start using absolute references? Well, we can make a column reference absolute, so that's absolute reference to column A, and the row absolute as well. So this is always referring to A1. So no matter how much we drag this around, it will always refer to A1. No matter what cell we're in, it's still referring to A1. And this can be useful if you need to refer to something like an interest rate or a sales threshold that you want your people to meet, because no matter how much you drag it around and apply it all to your team, they're all being judged by the same standard, or all your loans are on the same interest rate, which is obviously what you want. But how can we use row and column absolutes instead of just a complete absolute reference? Well, let's see what happens if we make the column absolute, but the row relative. So the column will remain unchanged, but the row is changing. So here, if we drag this down, the row will change, but look what happens when we drag it to the right. It's still referring to column A, so we're always, all three of these are reflecting what we see here. And then what happens if we make the column relative? but the row absolute. So here we'll make the column relative, the row absolute. So A can change, but 1 will not. So now if we drag this down, you'll see that it's still referring to column, all of these refer to column A, and all of these refer to 1. When we drag this to the right, the column will change because the column is relative. So here, every time, this whole area is referring to this cell, this whole area is referring to this cell, and this whole area is referring to that cell. So that's how relative and absolute references to cells work. Thanks so much for watching. For more information about Excel, VBA, or myself, check out my website, www.webermath.com. Come back next week when we'll talk about how to design a basic dashboard. Until next time, take care.